Hi, so let's talk about accrued interest. So for an unsubsidized loan, the student is going to have to pay the interest that is charged during their time in school and deferment period. Remember, deferment period is just a lot of times 6 months, but it's a period of time after they're done with school that they still don't have to make payments on their loan. And this is called accrued interest. So just think of this as interest that builds or adds up while they're in school. And so we need to know how to calculate accrued interest because it's going to need to be factored into finding the monthly payment when the student graduates and is ready to make payments. And so there's really two big parts. So to find monthly interest, or the accrued interest, sorry, you're going to find the monthly interest, and then we're going to find the number of months after the loan begins and before repayment. So basically the entire time that, interest is adding up, and then we're going to multiply those together. So monthly interest times the number of months, and that's going to give us accrued interest. So I know it seems like a lot of steps here, which it is, but really we're taking two numbers in the end and multiplying them together. And so let's go ahead and jump into an example, and I'll show you how we can go through all of these steps with a specific example. Okay, so suppose Piper borrows $4,500 at the start of her the community college. She graduates 2 years, 3 months later and has a deferment period of 6 months. Her loan interest rate is 5.2%. Find the accrued interest. Okay, so if I want to do that, I first have to start by finding the monthly interest. So I'm just going to write monthly interest. And I'm going to go through these steps 1, 2, and 3. So step 1, I compute the annual, so it's yearly interest by multiplying the principal balance, so that's the $4,500, that's the amount borrowed, times the rate as a decimal. So the 5.2%, I'm just going to take the percent sign and drop it and move the decimal 2 spot to the left, put a placeholder 0. So multiply 4,500 by 0.052. Okay, so 4,500 times 0.052. Okay, and that gives me $234. So that's the annual interest. That I'm going to want to divide by 365.25 to find the daily interest. So 234 divided by 365.25. And if you're wondering, why is it 365.25 since there's 365 days in a year? Well, there's a leap year every 4 years, and so we average that out. And we know banks want to make sure that the money is paid back, so we are adding in that leap year too. Okay, and then we get this big long decimal. Now, notice up here in the steps it says round to the nearest penny. That's also to the hundredth place, or 2 numbers after the decimal. So I'm going to round this to 0.64. So that's like 64 cents per day. And then step 3, I'm going to estimate how much interest there is per month by just multiplying that daily rate. So this is per day, and this first one is per year. And I'm just going to take this and I'm going to multiply it by 60. And this, or not 60, by 30, sorry. This is an approximation because we know not every month has 30 days, but this is a standard approximation that we use for these kinds of situations. And so we get $19.20, and that's per month. So that means while Piper is in school, $19.20 is being essentially charged to her every single month until she starts making payments on her loans. So now what we're going to do, we found the monthly interest. That was this first part. Now we're going to find the number of months after loan begins. So number of months, we'll say after or before repayment. Let's say that, before repayment. You could also call this accrual period. It's the period of time that the interest is accruing. So let's look at the time she's in school. So it says she's in school 2 years and 3 months. So that's this school time, and then has a deferment period of another 6 months. So she graduates and then they give her another 6 months of grace period where she doesn't have to make payment. So we're going to add all of that time together, and we want to change years to months. So we're going to multiply this by 12. So years times 12 will give you the months. So 24 months plus 3 months plus 6 months. And we're going to add that all up and we get 33 months. So what this means here, this interest charge of $19.20 a month was being charged all of those 33 months. And so we want to find the total interest that accrued. So I'm just going to write accrued interest. So that's the total, is just going to be $19.20 times 33. So $19.20 times 33. Oh, not 333. We're going to go back and hit the delete button. There we go. And so we get $633.60. And so this would be the interest amount that would actually end up being added to her principal when the monthly payment is calculated. But that's something you'll do later on. Okay, so let's look at another example. So in this example too, it's very similar to the first example. We've got a student named Piper. She borrows $4,500 at the start of her community college experience, and she spends 2 years there, transfers to a university, and graduates 2 years, 3 months later, and then has a deferment period of 6 months. Her loan rate is 5.2%. So this, there are a lot of similarities to the first problem. So the principal is the same. The rate is the same. And so when we're calculating monthly interest, it's actually the same as the first problem or first example. So we calculated that as $19.20 per month. The only thing that's different is the number of months before repayment. So let's look at that. So number of months before repayment. And this can also be called the accrual period. When interest is accruing. So she went to the community college for 2 years. So I'm just going to write 2 years, and then graduated from a university 2 years and 3 months after that. So we have another 2 years, 3 months, and then we have a 6 month deferment period. So just like the last problem, I want to identify the years and make sure I convert those to months. So I'm going to multiply those both by 12 to get the months. So I have 24 months at the community college plus 24 months and another 3 months at the university, and then the 6 months from the deferment period. So I'm going to add all of that up, and I end up getting 57 months total. So the only difference here is that when we go to find the accrued interest, which remember is just the monthly interest times the number of months, so these are multiplied together, we're taking the same steps as before, it's just the number of months before repayment is different. So for the accrued interest, we now have $19.20 times 57. So we'll get a much higher number since she spent a lot longer in school with this example compared to the last example. So we've got $1,094.40 of accrued interest. Okay, so let's look at one more example. In example 3, we still have Piper, who borrows $4,500 at the start of community college and spends 2 years there, transfers to a university and borrows $12,300, graduates 2 years, 4 months later, and has a deferment period of 6 months. Her loan rate is 5.2% for both loans. Find the accrued interest on the $12,300 loan. And so this is one of those problems where you're given more information than you need, which I know sometimes can be frustrating because you see, this amount up here, and we actually don't even need to think about the $4,500 loan because we're just being asked about that $12,300 loan. So I'm going to go through the two main steps that we did through the other problems. So finding the monthly interest and then finding the number of months after loan begins and before repayment. So I'm going to start by looking at the monthly interest, and I'm going to go through the steps. So step 1 is to find the annual interest. So we're going to multiply the principal balance times the interest rate. So I'm going to take the $12,300 and I'm going to multiply it by the rate. So 5.2%, you drop the percent sign, move that decimal 2 spots left, and place a 0. So 0.052. And that's going to be our annual interest. So 12,300 times 0.052. And we get $639.60. And then, so that's per year, what's charged in interest. And then step 2, to find the monthly interest, so I'm right here, step 2, we change it to daily. We divide by 365.25. So I take that previous answer, 639.60, and divide by 365.25. So I've already got that number in my calculator. It makes it handy. I just press divide, 365.25. Okay, and so at this number, I'm going to want to round to the nearest cent. So that's 2 numbers after the decimal place. So $1.75, and this would be per day. So that's the daily amount of interest charged to the student. And then I'm going to want to find the monthly interest. That's my goal all along. So I take $1.75, which is my daily rate, and I'm on step 3 underneath monthly interest. So I multiply that result by 30. So I multiply $1.75 by 30, and that gives me the monthly interest. So, and I'm actually, rather than taking my previous answer, I'm actually just going to type in 175 since my previous answer has all those decimals. And it's very possible that it wouldn't make a difference, but it's good practice just to use the number that you're writing down on your paper. Okay, so then we get $52.50, and that's per month. So that's the amount of interest per month that accrues while the student is in school. And then the second part of this is to find where that star is here, find the number of months after the loan begins and before repayment. So we're going to just write down number of months before repayment. So I'm going to look at how long the student was in school after she borrowed the $12,300. So she borrowed that and then she graduated 2 years, 4 months later. So that's the number I'm writing down. And then she had a deferment period of another 6 months. So these can be tricky. You really, I mean, they're almost reading comprehension problems as much as math problems, because you do have information in the beginning about this other loan amount and being at school 2 years after that loan amount. So, I mean, you've got to be really careful. And again, I'm only taking the 2 years, 4 months later part because that is what refers to the $12,300 loan, and that's specifically what's being asked. So I'm going to go ahead and convert years to months. So I'm going to multiply 2 times 12, and I get 24 months plus 4 months plus 6 months. Okay, so that gives me 34 months total that the student was in school or in deferment period after they took out that loan of $12,300. And so my last step is what's up here in red. So I take the monthly interest, so that's $52.50. So I'm just going to write accrued interest. And I take the monthly interest, so that's that $52.50, and I multiply it by number of months, which is 34. And that's going to give me that grand total of interest, $52.50, and then times 34. Okay, and so $17.85. And keep in mind, it doesn't ask in this problem, but this isn't the total interest that the student will end up paying for the entire loan. It's just the interest that accrues while she's in school. Once she starts making payments, let's say she takes 10 years to pay off her loan, she's going to pay interest all of those 10 years. So she's going to actually pay a lot more interest than the $17.85. But this is just when she is in school.